What's up, guys? I'm Athena. I'll be the instructor for the tutorial today, which is post-processing as part of the creative tutorial track. You can look at some of the different topics that we'll be covering today in this list below. So we'll be covering, what different render pipelines are, how to import and update packages, as well as assets, the basics of materials and shaders, and for the most part, post-processing and render pipeline effects. Cool. So these are the three things that you'll need. You'll need Unity Hub. You're going to need this version or some version of the 2020.3 long-term support build / LTS build. And then you'll need this specific package, which you should download before this tutorial begins because it can be a little big. I believe it is 102 megabytes, so just have that on hand. Cool. Yeah, and once you have those things set up, just open up your Unity Hub, and you should see something similar to this. You want to go and create a new project up here, and you want the project to be 3D, okay, not 3D sample scene, whatever. Core is 3D. You want the editor version to be, again, 2020.3. I have 0.19. You can do any variation of a 2020.3 LTS build. And go ahead and just name it something like post-process tutorial or whatever you would so wish. Cool. Make sure you have these settings in play and simply just click Create Project. Cool. Once you have your project open, it should look something similar to this. It doesn't have to look exactly like this by any means, but two things that I would like to make constant is that you have your scene in one location and your game in another location. This will make your life so much easier, I guarantee. So just have something similar to that and you should be good to go. So first, we're just going to make sure that our project has been opened correctly. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to Edit, then Project Settings, and then you're going to want to look under Graphics. Under Graphics, you want to look at the scriptable render pipeline settings. I'll refer to that as the SRP from now on, and you want to make sure that there's nothing set there. Essentially, the reason that this is because we started a 3D Core project. We want to make sure that we're using Unity's default renderer in this case. So once we've made that, once we've made sure that that's the case, you want to go to Window, then Package Manager, which will open up something like this. Just waiting for it to load. And then in this kind of tab that pops up, you want to go to the top left where it says Packages in Project, and you're going to want to switch that to the whole Unity registry. So you can look at everything that Unity has to offer instead of just what's been pre-downloaded onto your scene. Here you're then going to want to search High Definition RP, and that'll bring you to the High Definition Render Pipeline. And then you're going to want to click Install. Cool. Once the package is finished installing, you should see something called a Render Pipeline Wizard pop back up. You'll see a whole bunch of errors here. Don't worry about all of them. Simply click Fix All, and that should be able to solve your problem. Yeah. And then when it says create or load an Hdri render pipeline asset, you want to say create one. I'll explain what all of this is in a second. Cool. Yeah, after things are fixed, you should see that everything here is now a check mark. And your game view should look just slightly different. So going through all of this, you might be wondering a little bit about, what exactly a render pipeline is. Why the hell do we need to be doing all of this? Boink! So the reason for this is a render pipeline is essentially the steps that a game engine will take to load your game scene at the very bottom here. There are three main steps. The first one is finding out what's necessary to load, because it's not going to load anything that, is unnecessary. The second thing is actually loading those things in. And the third thing is applying effects and image processing to the camera and to the scene afterwards to get certain effects. Because these steps are so vague and they can also be changed around. Um, you have certain pipelines that don't necessarily work with each other. Unity has 3 that are built in: the core, and then 2 SRPs, scriptable render pipelines. The one that we're going to be working with is called the Hdrp, which is good for sort of high fidelity work, so stuff that you'd stereotypically see in AAA games, and also makes it good for post-processing effects. If you want to learn more about what a render pipeline is and all these other things, you can click on the "What is a render pipeline" thing underneath whatever step this is, and you'll see a more detailed explanation than the one that I just gave. Cool. Once you have this Hdrp downloaded, first of all, you can, I believe, go and make sure, like, if you ever want to change some settings in the wizard again, you can just simply go to Window, Render Pipeline, and HD Render Wizard, and it should open this tab back up again. So you can install packages, do whatever the hell you want. If you want to check to make sure you're using the right render pipeline, or maybe let's say you need to load in a new pipeline asset, simply go to Edit, Project Settings, and Graphics. And yeah, you'll see here that we have the HDRPA loaded in. Cool. Now that that's done, we're going to want to load in the package. This is very important. Do not load in the package before you've installed the Hdrp. I repeat, do not load the package before you've installed the Hdrp. The reason for this is because the package has already been calibrated to be compatible with Hdrp. If you load it into a scene that's not compatible with Hdrp, so like the core, and then you try to, like switch it back to Hdrp, some like random happens, and you're not going to be able to see anything in your scene. So just, making sure that that's the case. So let's say you have your package downloaded now. Just to load it in, you can either drag and drop, so that's one option. You see, like, you can drag and drop here, or you can just double click with your scene open, of course. And you'll see an import package come up. You'll see all of the assets in here that are marked. If you want to hypothetically not import something, although I don't know why the hell you'd want to do that right now, you can just uncheck something, but we're just going to click import. Cool. When your package is imported, you should see a couple new folders. You're going to see the mini first person and the old C port, and then also an extra scene called the tutorial scene. So you're going to want to open that scene up. Cool. And this should be what you see. You should see like sort of this kind of castle scene in the middle of open water and a little shape over here. Cool. So, just a little bit of tutorial on how to navigate your scene. What you're going to do is you're going to, right click on your mouse button, and right click allows you to look around. You can just keep looking around indefinitely as much as you want. The next thing you can do is you can use the WASD keys to move forward, left, behind, and right, respectively. So stuff like that. It'll usually just keep on moving faster and faster until you stop. If you want to move faster, you can press Shift. It'll make you go really fast. And then if you want to go up, you press E. If you want to go down, you press Q. And let's say you hypothetically want to focus on something, simply press F. With the object selected. That's the caveat. So F with the object selected. So stuff like that. Cool. Yeah, now that we've gotten all of that down, cool. We're going to want to set up our post-processing now. The pipeline for post-processing is very smooth for the Hdrp thing.
Welcome!
But you simply go to the first-person camera, which is under the first-person controller in your hierarchy, which is should be default on your left. Click on first-person camera, scroll down all the way to the very bottom, and then you're going to click Add Component. And then in Add Component, you are going to want to search Volume, and then click the Volume component to add it. You'll also have modes. You'll see like this kind of thing pop up with like modes, weights, yada yada. But first, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new profile. What this means is essentially you have a new group of post-processing effects that you're attaching to the camera, because you can have multiple groups of this. Let's say you want to have a very gloomy castle interior, but you want the outside to be nice and sunny. You can have two separate effects for that. And that's also where this variable comes into play, the mode variable. So you have two modes, global and local. Global essentially means that this is applied to everything no matter what. Everything that's under the sun, everything here, will have this post-processing effect applied to it. If you want it to only be a specific place, like the castle that we just talked about, you change it to local. If you click Add Collider, let's just say box for this moment, you'll see a collider here. What this means is essentially every post-process effect that you make is only going to occur inside of this collider. Of course, you can change the size of this collider however much you want. You know, I can stretch it out, I can make it taller, anything like that. But all your effects will only occur inside this collider. Cool. For today, we're simply just going to be working with global mode, so delete that box collider or whatever collider and switch it back to global. And we want to make sure the weight is set to 1 as well. All of these kind of variables, because I'm not going to be touching on every single one of them, you can learn more about by simply hovering over it. So that's a handy tip. Cool. So, also something else before we start is we need to change the anti-aliasing. So you'll see here under Camera General, there's something that says Post Anti-Aliasing. We want the anti-aliasing to be FXAA, or Fast Approximate Anti-Aliasing. You can, again, click into the dictionary to read more about exactly what anti-aliasing is, but essentially this is just a way of making sure that our edges blend together nicely. It's also pretty important for post-processing effects because they do a lot of whack shit to your scene, and when it does its whack, you want to make sure that it's doing it in a way that's blended and smooth and realistic. When it casts reflections, you don't want them to look like boxy, jagged things that don't look realistic. And FXAA is simply the one that will run on most computers. Cool. Now that all of that is sorted out, what we're going to do is we're going to click on Add Override. This essentially allows us to create a new effect. So the first one that I'm going to be teaching is a Skybox. For those who don't know what a Skybox is, it's essentially it's essentially like what you see here. It's kind of like a wrapper that goes over your whole scene and makes it seem like there's like sky or like distant horizon or, you know, other shit like that. But yeah. And the first one that we're going to be making is called HDRI, Sky. So when a post-processing effect gets added in, oftentimes we'll have all of its settings enabled. This is because Unity does not want to load anything that it doesn't need to load. And if it doesn't need to load, like new variables, new any of that, it's not going to. So you're going to need to check something to make sure it exists. So we're going to check the HDRI sky variable, and you'll see that it takes a cube map here. A cube map is just a fancy way of saying a box with something painted inside it that will envelop this whole scene. So you select it, go to your project folders, and in the search bar, search reflection probe no spaces. You'll see a whole list of them come up. If you want to, you can also click on them to see like that. Yes, indeed, they are a texture shape. That's a cube, which is default a cube map, yada yada. But what's important to us is we can simply take one, drag it in, and wow, look, automatically this scene just looks so much better. The reflections are nice. The background, there actually looks like there's something there. And yeah, you can also, there's a lot more settings here that you want to play with, or if you want to play with, you can. You can change the intensity, so yeah, all of a sudden we select the intensity mode to exposure, and it looks like the scene just exploded. This is simply because of the way the lights were set up in this scene. All you have to do to fix that is simply go to intensity mode and set it to lux. But yeah, you can change the rotation. So yeah, like this sky like rotates. You can also do this with a script. So let's say you want to do this mid-game. This is also something that you can do. And yeah, any single texture can actually be a cube map. This is because textures are actually just sprites, which is why that's the case. But the reason why things work as cube maps is because they have been specifically oriented to be all sides of a cube. We can click on one and open it in Photoshop to show you a quick example here. But yeah, so you see how there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 faces, enough faces for a cube. And yeah, so if you ever want to create your own texture, or cube map, my bad, that's one way you can do it. So cool, that's the first effect, is creating a real quick sky. So if you don't want to make a traditional sky, let's say like you want it to be something similar to this, but you want it to be like purple or whatever the hell. What you're going to do, first remove this component, is first you need to add an override to your visual environment. And then you're going to select type and change it to gradient sky. Ambient mode doesn't matter. Yeah, for the lighting, if you want to fix this lighting, all you have to do is go to the hierarchy and search up light, select all your point lights, and then in the right, when there's the intensity and the lumens, just like turn that number down. Okay, that's not fast enough. Just set it to like 200 or something like that. Yeah, and then that should fix everything. Cool. Back to the actual tutorial. So yeah, let's say you want to make a gradient sky. You have to first put in a visual environment that selects type gradient sky for the sky. The reason why this is the case is because Unity's defaults when it comes to what the camera is willing to show is limited to sky, color, or none. These are its defaults. So if you just add a gradient sky as is, your camera isn't going to be able to recognize it and thus isn't going to be able to show it. So putting this visual environment in essentially tells the camera, hey, we're going to put a new sky type for you that you should be able to run, calling it a gradient sky. And now that you have that, you simply will go to sky and then gradient sky. And then you can simply check these boxes for top, middle, bottom. And you should be able to just, yeah, do whatever the hell you want. Change it to purple, change it to red, bright pink, anything you want. You can do. But yeah, there you go. Cool. And another, let's see, yeah, another post-processing trick that I'll be showing today, is screen space reflections. So if you're looking at the GitHub, you can see the power that screen space reflections have. Using ray tracing, they can immediately make a scene seem so much more fucking realistic just by adding reflections everywhere. So how you're going to get to that is you're going to go to, I believe it is lighting, and then under lighting there should be something that says screen space reflection. And you're going to want to click on that. Cool. So when you first add it, there's going to be like a weird error that says this Hdrp asset does not support screen space reflection. This is simply because, again, as I had said before, Unity does not want to load things that are going to be very computationally intensive, and screen space reflections are. And it'll be a waste if you don't use it, essentially. And so they don't want to do that. So in order to enable this and tell Unity, oh yeah, we do want to use it, you're going to want to go to Edit, then Project Settings, and then go to Quality. And under Quality, there should be something that says Hdrp. Click on this asset, and when it opens up, under the lighting bar, you should see something that says Reflections. And then you just want to check the mark next to Screen Space Reflection. And that just tells Unity, hey, we're going to be using this effect. There's other things you can do here. Feel free to just check this out as you wish later on. Cool. Now that we have this, I believe the quickest way to see how this changes is simply by looking at the water, which is a reflective surface. So you click enable, and then you can click, I believe it is object thickness. And then, right, so this simply dictates the thickness of objects that the light rays that the computer will be using to calculate your reflections can pass through. So the thicker the object, then the more reflections you're going to have. Yeah, and see, we like turn it up and immediately you have more reflections of the dock on water. Cool, yay. Cool. Um, yeah, and that's about all of the specific um post-processing effects I'll be teaching you, simply because everything else is either self-explanatory or things that I want you to try yourself, because you can look at the variables, you can fiddle around with the tabs. For example, the fog is really cool. If you click enable and enable again, we can check all of these. We can check the color that we want it to be. So we can make it like a red color. Uh, yeah, we can do whatever the hell you want. You can make the base height very high, maximum height really high, and then the max fog distance is like, you can make it like, uh, yeah, whatever the hell you want. Cool. And yeah, that's about it. If you don't know what some of these things are, feel free to either at me in the chat, or you can go into the dictionary and look at what's up. And so the final task is simply using all of the things that you've learned, create a scene that invokes a certain mood. So, um, like when I turn everything here off, like when I turn the volume off, this is what it looks like. I want you to invoke some kind of mood. Maybe you want to invoke a sort of horror mood, so you can add like film grain, right, onto the scene. Um, so it becomes like a grainy sort of like old-timey texture if you want. You can see it vaguely down there. But yeah, whatever you like, and just simply make a mood out of it. And if you want to post it in the tutorials chat, feel free. But that's it. Thanks for coming.